Okay, well, I think what I'm going to talk to you about is about leading change, but I'm going to talk to you about what I know and what I've been thinking about for quite a long time. And one of the simplest ways of explaining that is to say that I've been thinking about public goods for a long time in the context of how they're changing and how they're changing in a way back to what they always were. And I hope I'll be able to make clear to you what I mean by that. There's an informal definition of a public good, which is that it's something that the government builds because if it didn't, nobody would. And economists have investigated the characteristics of those where we're forced to make alternative arrangements where markets don't seem to produce those things. And the two characteristics that they identify are that a good is a public good if it is non-rivalrous. This is a rivalrous good. If I have it, you don't have it. The words I'm using are non-rivalrous. I can use them, you can use them. So that's the explanation of rivalry. And excludability involves the idea of my needing to exclude you. I have to be able to do that if I want to ask you to pay a price for something. Otherwise you'll say, look, thanks very much, I won't pay, but I'll still enjoy whatever you're offering. And of course, lighthouses are a good example of that. The problem of excludability is the free rider problem, the fact that people who don't pay can free ride on people who do. And non-rivalrousness, if you think about it, is a great free rider opportunity. That is, once you create some good, everyone can enjoy it. So they're in some tension. But economists have got no doubt what they think about these things. They think public goods are a problem because public goods don't organise themselves. And I gradually came to the view that, yes, in a whole range of areas where public goods are created, they remain problems. Most of the people in this room will be quite close, sort of at the coalface of why they're problems. We don't know exactly how many of these goods people want, and still we have to try and provide it for them. The people will complain. They'll say they want more of those things, but of course they want lower taxes and so on. So you can see the problem side of things. But then there is this opportunity side of things, which has of course been becoming more and more important. I know you'll all know what that is. It's the Yongle Encyclopedia from the 15th century in China, and that was the largest encyclopedia in the world until 2002. It's pretty extraordinary, and it was a larger encyclopedia than that one. Those two pictures are pictures of the encyclopedia as a private good. It's pretty easy to see how you sell that and how it's a rivalrous good and you can sell it and so on. But I think we probably, if you think about it, you can realise that Britannica was starting to get pretty nervous by the time it put that out, because that's a tiny bit of private good and a whole lot of potential public good. And at roughly the same time, a guy called Jimmy Wales was planning to completely revolutionise all this, realised that all this knowledge was being built by governments and by universities, and why don't we just make it all available for free? And it didn't work. Nupedia went nowhere, and then one weekend they replicated Nupedia, put it up on a wiki and said to the world, go for your life. And it turned out that once we tapped into whatever it was about this social engine inside us, which gets us interested in this, somehow draws us in and we think, that fact's wrong, I want to change it, or whatever it is that's motivated, the many motives that motivate people on Wikipedia, the thing simply took off. So, so that's the idea of all this information, which is becoming more and more important, its potential value to us as a public good. And Adam Smith, the founder of modern economics, is of course famous for producing a treatise on private goods called The Wealth of Nations, more famous in his own time for producing a book called The Theory of Moral Sentiments, which is really, I would argue, it's about the evolution of social mores, and he doesn't use the term public good, but he's actually talking about the social preconditions of the market, the public goods in the marketplace, or the public goods in the society that are necessary for markets to thrive. And he doesn't tell you a story about how those mores are built by the government, or even or how government doesn't play a big role there. And in fact, so I would suggest to you that there's this other class of public goods. We've got public goods built by the government, and we've also got emergent public goods which are simply produced by the process of life. And of all of those public goods, language is the most fundamental. And believe it or not, Adam Smith wrote a treatise on the evolution of language. He was thinking about the ways in which public goods emerge from life. So very quickly, this is a slight digression, but I suppose in the 80s and maybe in the 90s to some extent, there were various people there was a sort of a zeitgeist which said that maybe the more things that were private goods, the better. Maybe we could sort of do without public goods, which after all they were a problem, and so on. Well, we actually have experiments in the world where there are no public goods. They're called failed states. And I want to suggest to you, as Adam Smith suggested, that public and private goods are always in some kind of tension with always in some kind of ecological relationship with each other, each reinforcing the other. And so a way of kind of rethinking about what our job is anywhere, in a firm, in the government, or wherever, is to try and think about the health of this ecology, or in a family, the health of this ecology between self-regard and group regard, between public and private goods. Let me then try and, so that's all fairly theoretical, I suppose. Let me try to use those ideas to just illustrate one thing. You have probably all heard of the expression Web 2.0. This is one way of thinking about it. That's an illustration of a network. It's a phone network, and each of the conversations that happen on that phone network are private. And Web 2 is a way of simply knowing that there are conversations going on, and then you can find your way to them, and you find your way to them with Google or with Twitter hashtags or whatever. So it's an open network which builds this public good, and it's of incredible power. So here we have now, if you look at all those platforms of Web 2, they're actually public goods. And they're non-rivalrous, they're available for free, nobody's excluded from them, and not one of them was built by a government, and some of them were built for profit, some of them were built philanthropically. And there is one difference we have to make to our definition, because what's happening here is this is the public good as opportunity, not the public good as a problem that we're trying to solve. And that means that a company like Google realises that it's a private profit-seeking company, and it can make more money by turning what it does into a public good and making it free than it can make by charging you money, which of course technically it would be perfectly easy to do. It's not an excludable thing. And so this is there is now a vast platform of things on the internet where these public goods proliferate. Here's a friend of mine, Esther Anatolitas, who's at the Melbourne Writers' Festival and decides to tell everybody that there's good soup at Beer Deluxe as a public announcement. She's creating a public good just like that. That's how easy it is. And what is it worth? What is the hashtag worth? Well, the hashtag by which anyone can be part of a conversation anywhere. I don't know what it's worth if it's only used to know what Lady Gaga is wearing at tonight's concert. Probably not a lot of money as far as I'm concerned, but it's also used to remove dictators. It's used in natural disasters and emergencies where we can do extraordinary things that we couldn't do before. If it is worth 1,000th of the world's output, which seems to me to be as a reasonable guess, it's worth $60 billion a year to us. Twitter didn't come up with the hashtag, the users came up with the idea of the hashtag. So somebody somewhere kind of cooked up this idea that's worth $60 billion a year to us, and we're all playing along and we're all heir to that extraordinary productivity, inventiveness and capability, all part of our language instinct. And so, all right, this is all, so what does this mean in practical terms? Well, one of the things that it means, as I've intimated to you when I talked about the hashtag, is that individual people can do extraordinary things and they can do them extraordinarily fast. I don't know how long the Christchurch earthquake had finished before this guy, Tim McNamara, who lives in Wellington, decided to help out. He didn't go to Christchurch. What he did was he tuned into all the tweets that were coming out of Christchurch. There were approximately 300,000 of them, which makes it a bit difficult for him to go through them all. What he was trying to do was he was tuning into the hashtags, and then he was trying to extract information from those tweets. And of the 300,000, 15,000 had information like that, telling you whether a pharmacy had insulin or not, whether a petrol station had diesel or not, and so on. And that was coordinated by volunteers around the world, by Crisis Commons, of which Tim is a member. And so remarkable things were able to be done remarkably quickly. So we now have a different kind of spectrum. There's those public goods that are in the textbook, and here are all these other, what I call emergent public goods. Linux, open source software, is a language public good, an emergent public good, and then there are all these ones that turn up on platforms. And so we've gone from public goods as a problem, and of course they remain a problem in all those areas where we keep having to fund them from government, and there is also this other aspect of public goods as an opportunity. If we think of this class of goods there must be a class of goods, I'm trying to go back again, yeah. There must be a class of goods between the left, the one on the left is emergent and self-funding, the one on the right, governments coercively fund. There must be a class of public goods that somehow need more funding than you can get for free on the internet, and they must be they could be pretty important, and I'll just suggest a couple to you because I don't have much time. That's a whole list of stuff I wrote up in 2009 at the end of the Government 2.0 task force, and I've had my eyes out for this question ever since, and I'll just show you examples are much more powerful than words. But the question is, what could traditional means of public good funding do in that space? So we've already had Tim McNamara, and that's an example. Here is a company which is called BuyNew. What BuyNew does is it builds in the cloud an application which effectively enables the 2G smartphones of Africa and developing Asia to simulate, the 2G feature phones of Africa and developing Asia to simulate smartphones. Pretty powerful technology, I think you would agree. How does it do it? The processing, which couldn't be done inside those phones because they're not up to it, is done in the cloud, and the signals are compressed 10 times going to and from the phone. And I can give you a demonstration if you're interested. So I thought, well, that's pretty exciting. And this company is in Sydney, so I got on the phone, as I am wont to do, and I rang the the managing director there, and I said, have any philanthropic organisations which are doing development in Asia been in touch with you? No. Has AusAid been in touch with you? No. The Gates Foundation had been, well, hadn't by the time I spoke to him, but have now been in touch with him. That's a remarkable thing, and if you ask yourself, if you're asking yourself the question, how would we promote development in Asia or Africa, this technology might change that question a great deal. Instead of helping build a water hole or something, one might give smartphones, or not smartphones, but feature phones to the kids in schools. You can get e-books on this, you can get all of the facilities of a smartphone effectively. So that's a sort of potential public-private partnership looking us in the face. And the way this works, I'll do it very quickly for you, the way Google works, the way any of these platforms work, is they offer an individual some private service. In the case of Google, it is finding a better link or finding the right link, and they parlay that into a public good. So so Google knows which link you clicked on. If you clicked on the third link rather than the first link, you're telling it that the third link's better than the first link, and if enough people do that, Google learns and turns that into an improved public good. So let me show you something that I'm now. Facebook does this something similar, but using a completely different engine, which is what I call the language instinct, which is the fact that we see things and we like them, and we somehow want other people to know that we like them. But let me just show you this. I was recently in San Francisco and was at a health conference, and I listened to the woman who is the CEO of this organisation. It's called 23andMe. She happens to be married to Sergey Brin. Some of you may know that he's the co-founder of Google, so she's well cashed up. And she had this idea. She was a science writer for the Wall Street Journal, I think. And Larry Page, the other co-founder of Google, said to her, "Stop complaining about your life." She was complaining about how all these health things that they were that she was writing about were basically sort of in it for the money, and that was that. And he said, "Well, why don't you do something better?" So she did. And 23andMe is this is a slight simplification, but it's a genome sequencing company. It's consumer genome sequencing. You pay them $299, as you can see there. I'm not being paid by this company, but they will send you a kit in the mail. You send them back some of your saliva, and within about 2 or 3 weeks you can go and look at your aspects of your genome on their website. Behind all this, of course, they're building a public good. I've described to you the private good, but the public good then is this database that they're building, and the database can do extraordinary things. And one of the things that the database has recently done is been to replicate 180 genetic associations, showing, because you not only show them your genome, you do quite lengthy questionnaires about what your susceptibilities are and your family's health and stuff like that, and they were able to replicate 180 genetic associations from the literature, and those 180 genetic associations would have cost millions and millions of dollars to establish using modern techniques, and they did that in an afternoon. Well, it was more than an afternoon, but they did it by rummaging around in their database. So I was watching this and I was thinking, wow, they've got 180,000 customers, and I was thinking, is the capital value to the Australian health system of having somebody's genome and therefore knowing how often you ought to screen them for breast cancer and prostate cancer and all of those things. Would that be worth something to the Australian health system? I would think it would be. And would it bring, if we started using the Australian health system to help get people into that system, would we be able to get the costs down? Well, they told me that they could, because I talked to them about all these ideas. And so you can see where I'm going with this, a public-private partnership where 23andMe has built this thing. The Australian health system says, well, the more people who are on this, the better off we all are. A huge and fantastic database is built, which we can use for all sorts of research purposes. And of course we would, I think it's important that we would impose upon them a whole range of obligations, not just about privacy, but access to the database and so on. So those things pass my test about policy, which is Kimmy's test in Kath and Kim, which is what's there not to like. I was going to talk to you about a whole bunch of other things, but I've taken up enough of your time and I'm happy to leave it there. Thank you.